this morning?
I am
alive, awake, alert, enthusiastic, and filled with the joy of living. See, they remembered something I said last week. That's really impressive. So, does anyone have any good they'd like to share today?
Woo, it's my birthday tomorrow.
Her birthday's tomorrow. We're celebrating. That's right. Okay.
In our family, we celebrate the whole month.
That's good. That's a good
I'm in
thing.
celebration already.
All right. All right.
I don't have to travel this week.
Yay! Lynn's here. Lynn, what is your good this week?
I am no longer in pain.
Yes!
Absolutely fantastic. Wow. So before I start today's service, I want to call your attention to this jar right here. And last week, the jar that we had disappeared, along with the money that we had in it. And so we gave that a lot of thought, and perhaps what happened is when we left, we didn't shake the door, because sometimes they don't always latch, and we have a lot of people come by here. But the other thing Reverend Dawn and I talked about, well, texted or emailed about, we didn't really talk, was what is the lesson in this? And what we are thinking is we were not thinking big enough. So we got a bigger jar. And Linda has money to put in it. See, yesterday when I put money in it, I spilled it all over the floor.
That makes a great sound.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, change for change. That's what we call that, change for change. So I have a story for you about a group of frogs, and this group of frogs was traveling through the countryside, and two of them fell in a pit. They fell in a pit, and they proceeded to try to jump out of the pit. And the other frogs, they got around outside of the pit, and they're saying, you might as well give it up, the pit's too deep, you're not going to get out. And the frogs kept trying, and they kept trying, and the other frogs kept telling them, it's too deep. You can't get out. And so one of the frogs gave up, and he just laid down and died. But the other frog, he kept jumping and jumping and jumping, and he finally jumped out. And the other frog said to him, didn't you hear what we said? He said, no, I'm deaf. I'm deaf. He thought they were encouraging him when they were yelling at him. So that's my little story for today. And I have a second story, and it's about Pygmalion. How many of you know about Pygmalion? Yeah, well, Pygmalion was a sculptor who carved a woman out of ivory. And he had decided he'd given up women because in this particular culture, there was a lot of debauchery going on, and he decided he didn't want to participate in that, but he fell in love with his ivory statue. Excuse me. He fell in love with his ivory statue and decided he wanted to find someone who was, I'm sorry.
You're taking time. No worries.
So no wonder half the congregation is out with a common cold. Were you giving hugs out last week?
Oh, thank you. Anyway, he decided he wanted the living likeness of this statue. And he quietly wished for it, and he gave the statue a kiss, and its lips were warm. And he gave it another kiss, and he discovered that the statue was alive. And he went on to marry her and have children. So the moral of the story is that he had this belief about this statue, and he created his own reality. James Allen, I don't know if you know who that is, he wrote, As a Man Thinketh, he says, dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, you shall become. Your vision is the promise of what you will be one day. Your idea is the prophecy that you will unveil. And Ralph Waldo Emerson told us, the only person you are destined to become is the person you believe yourself to be. In spiritual economics, Eric Butterworth tells us it's just as easy to see yourself successful as it is to see yourself a failure, and it's far more interesting. Further, he tells us that psychologists have proven or discovered that we cannot really tell the difference between what is real and what we believe to be real. And it takes more than words to create our reality, however. It is a matter of aligning ourselves with the infinite and allowing the things to manifest in our life. There was a salesman who went to work for a new company, and they put him out in this district, and he made $25,000 in commissions. Well, he thought that was pretty good, but that territory should have brought in at least $75,000 worth of commissions. So they moved this man to a different territory, a much more difficult territory, where the goal was $25,000 in commissions. And he met that goal. He worked very hard and he met that goal. And so they moved him back to that $75,000 estimated territory. And guess what? He made $25,000 because that was his mental equivalency of what he thought that he could earn. He created his own mental equivalent. So today's talk is entitled Believing is Seeing. Now usually the term that we are used to hearing is seeing is believing, particularly if you are a skeptic like our doubting Thomas. Is it not true that often when we see things, we imagine things, we think we're going to create things, what comes up for us is doubt and fear of failure, worry, all of those things that tell us why we cannot do something? Those things hold us back from being all that we can be. And in Mark 9:23 it says, all things are possible to him that believes. All things are possible to him that believes. Isn't that quite a concept? So what does it mean to believe? What does it mean to believe? Well, according to Mr. Webster, it means to accept something as true, to feel sure of the truth of it. We say believing is seeing, meaning that when we believe something is true, when we have faith that it is true, when we know for certain that it is true, it becomes the truth for us. It will manifest for us when we absolutely know it. Butterworth says that faith means different things to different people. Well, do you have a faith in God, or do you have a faith of God? That's the key. A faith in God means that we think that somewhere out there, somewhere up there, somewhere is someone or something that is going to create and do things for us. Whereas when we have a faith in God, we believe that that divine presence is within us that allows us to create good in our lives. Last week we talked about the divine flowing through us. I want you to think about that light in your living room with the dimmer switch. And when you turn it up, more power goes to it. And when you turn it down, it gets dimmer and dimmer because it has less power going to it. Well, that's how our faith is. When we turn down our faith, we reduce that divine flow of love, that divine flow of creativity that moves through us. And when we turn it up, we let that good flow through us full speed ahead, don't we? We know the truth of who we are. The faith of God deals with the law. The law always says yes. It means we can turn to the law and allow the presence to flow freely through us and demonstrate wonderful things. Ernest Holmes says in The Science of Mind, electricity was a reality in the universe when Moses led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. This is true of all natural laws. They have existed, but only when we understood may they be used. So let's think about that. Electricity existed at the time of Moses, but we didn't have electric lights until we figured out how to channel that energy, did we? Until we learned to harness it and to use it. Well, the same is true of our spiritual energy. We get to learn to use the law. We get to learn to use the law, we get to practice, and then we can create from us. Eric Butterworth tells us that the most prevalent disease of our time is I can't-itis. I can't do this because I'm too old. I can't do this because I'm poor. I can't do this because I'm not smart enough. I can't do this because I was born into the wrong family. I can't do this because I can't. Because I don't know how. Because I'm too young. What is your I can't? What is your I can't? All of us have the frog that we heard about earlier. He didn't have an I can't. He didn't know he couldn't, and so he did, didn't he? He didn't know, and so he managed to jump right out of that hole. So what we need to do is to affirm our oneness, to affirm our wholeness, and to remember that I can because I am. I am one with that divine and holy presence, and I can do it. All of us can, because every one of us is spirit. There's not one person that is not spirit. We like to think sometimes they are, but we are as much spirit as we'll ever be. We're not going to be more spirit because we are all spirit now, and it is our duty, it is our responsibility, it is our job to own that, to become the truth of who we are. Yes, we're human, but we're also divine. And so what we need to do is unleash that spirit within us and allow it to move through our lives and create good things for us. And affirmations do not create the truth for you. You can say, all the affirmations, but until you have the belief behind it, the belief that aligns you with that divine being that's within you, you will not create the things that you want. And we need to practice. Practice, practice, practice. It doesn't matter how good you are at something. If you're the golf pro, you still have to practice. If you're the maestro, you still have to practice. If you have the baseball team that won first place, you still have to practice, and so do we. In order to maintain and empower that creativity within us, we need to practice all the time. Practice that communion with the divine. Practice listening within. Practice getting in touch with that creative power of the universe. Remember what Jesus said? It is not I, but the Father within me who does the work. We need to practice listening to that still small voice. God can work through us. Believe it, because believing is seeing. When we are centered in the divine flow, we allow our own uniqueness, and each of us is unique, to attract to us what is the highest and best for us. We get to put into practice the divine expressing through us. We are all spiritual beings, every one of us. When we open that channel and allow God to speak, the divine to speak through us. Remember, it's always present and everywhere present. And when we believe it, we can see it. It unfolds before our very eyes. God, the good, omnipotent. And remember, it's not stuff we're trying to demonstrate. It's our consciousness we're trying to tune in. The stuff just comes by itself, or not by itself, but as a residual of our belief system. And I'm not saying that you're not going to have any difficulties, because after all, we are human. There might be a few rapids in our river. But remember, we're always at choice, like those two frogs. We're always at choice. We can make the choice to move forward, or we can make the choice to give up. God is always present. We are demonstrating prosperity of consciousness by our unity with Spirit. And what is prosperity anyway? What is prosperity? Prosperity is not stuff. Prosperity is the state of our mind, the state of our consciousness. Each one of us, when we believe that we are spiritual beings, when we align ourselves with the divine, we allow that richness of the universe to express as us. And as we do that, we truly can see the power and presence of the One. We are always a choice. In Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes tells us we need to know with scientific certainty that there is a consciousness and a power in the universe that responds to us definitely, directly, and dynamically. Each individual must arrive at a place in his own consciousness where this contact is so immediate and so dynamic that if every other living soul denied it, he would still know. If every other living soul denied that consciousness, we would still know that we are one with the One with God. In Foundations class, we talk about the seed, the soil, and the plant. First, we plant the seed. Now we must picture in our mind what it is that we want to create. That is what we call the seed thought. And then we get to put it into that creative medium, divine and creative medium, and allow that law to create for us. And we need to nurture it. Just like you need to water and fertilize the seed you plant in the ground, we need to nurture that thought that we plant in the creative medium, and we need to pull out the weeds. We need to get rid of the I can'ts. I'm not good enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not smart enough. We need to get rid of all of those. In the book of Mark in the New Testament, it talks about planting our seeds and growing our fruit. So I ask you now, what kind of seed are you planting? Are you planting the I'm too old, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough? Or are you planting the I am one with that divine and holy presence? It is in it that I live and breathe and have my being. I am one with it, and I can create through it. It is true for each and every one of us, one with the one with that dynamic and creative power of spirit. We know that there's absolutely nothing outside of God. We know that everything is here. It has always been here. Matter does not disappear. It simply changes form. And so we are breathing the same air that Buddha breathed. We are breathing the same air that Jesus breathed. Nothing has been destroyed. We have the power to create the reality that we want in our life. So what I want to ask you now is, when you plant those seeds, are you allowing Spirit to be in the driver's seat? Or are you trying to give it directions on which way to go? You know, sometimes our doubts are our weeds, and we miss that stop because we're so busy trying to give directions the way we think it should go that we miss the opportunities that are there for us. Trust Spirit to do its work in its way. That's a big thing. Ernest Holman Creative Mind says, thought can attract to us only that which we first mentally embody. We cannot attract to ourselves that which we are not. We can attract in the outer only that which we have completely mentally embodied within, that which has become a part of our mental makeup, a part of our inner understanding. We can attract to ourselves only the things that can become part of our mental makeup. So when we choose to attract things into our lives, they need to be things that we truly believe, like that man that could do the $25,000, but he couldn't do the $75,000. We need to start right now, right here, right where we are. And as we make progress, as we practice, as we improve, we'll be able to create greater and greater things, because we will be able to embrace that idea that all things are possible to him that believes, and when you believe it, you can see it. And are you grateful? Are you grateful? Now, the universe doesn't need your gratitude. It does what it does. It doesn't need you to say thank you. It's just there. It's there. However, you need gratitude. You need to give thanks for whatever it is you envision to happen today, and give thanks like it's already happened, because that shows that you truly believe in the power of your word, doesn't it? When we can give thanks. Paul said, in all things give thanks, and this will center you in divine substance. Plato says a grateful mind is a great mind, which eventually attracts to itself great things, which means that gratitude is a requirement to achieving our goals. It means that when we are grateful, we open our minds and our hearts to that flow of the divine. It means that we allow God to flow through us. We are opening our hearts and our minds to that universal flow. And so I have homework for you this week again. I know, hard to believe I have homework. There's some labels like this, they're just pieces of paper, but they're labels on the back table, and I don't have a jar because, I don't have a house here. But I would suggest that you take them home and put them on the outside of a jar. And every day, there they are. And every day you get to write down on little slips of paper things that you are grateful for, and put them in the jar, your gratitude jar. And then you know what, when you have a day when things aren't going really your way and you're feeling kind of down in the dumps, you can get them out, you can lay them out on the table and look at all the things that you have to be grateful for, because sometimes when we're in the midst of it, we forget. Now there's a lady on the internet who does these, and she uses a full sheet of paper, and she makes little things that says, I am grateful for, my life is blessed by. And she makes them into those paper chains so she can hang them like on the Christmas tree, all the things that you're grateful for. But the idea is to have a visual reminder, because sometimes we forget, don't we, what we have to be thankful for. So I'm thankful for the cough drop. Thank you very much. You're probably grateful for it too. So let us pray. Sweet, sweet Spirit, Father, Mother, God, that whole and holy presence, that divine essence that surrounds us and infills us. God, the good, omnipotent, light, love, peace, and joy. I know there is absolutely nothing outside of God, and therefore I am one with it. And if that is true for me, that is true for each and every person here, one with the one. I know that as we move through this week, we move through it, knowing the truth of our being, knowing the I amness of us, knowing that as we move into that space of I amness, we create all of the good we want in our lives. I know that health and happiness and joy and peace and gratitude and compassion are ours this day. I know that every interaction that we have with another is God interacting with God, and I call that good and very good. And I give thanks. I give thanks for that powerful presence of Spirit in my life this day. I give thanks for the opportunity that each and every one of us has to harness the power of the divine, the power of love, the power of peace, the power of joy, and bring it into fruition in our lives. I give thanks for coming together in community. I simply say thank you as I release this word to the perfect working of the perfect law that always, always and only says yes. Please join me in affirming, and so it is.